Welcome back, dreamers. We're returning to Neverland this week with the 2002 sequel to Peter Pan, Return to Neverland. But before we get into the history, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's happening on certainpov.com this week. On Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, the boys have Bethesda community manager Manny Perez. And on Screen Snark, they have guest Nathan Brandy of the New Entertainment System podcast to talk about podcasts and My Hero Academia. Over on Reignite, our hosts wrap up Mass Effect 2 with their final mission and the arrival of DLC. And our new friends over at Let's Rewatch are joined by magician John Armstrong to discuss the 2000 film X-Men. Find all of our amazing program at certainpov.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Now, on to the show. Unlike most Disney movies that I've covered on this podcast, there isn't a lot of information to share with you about the background on this picture. The 2002 film was released by Walt Disney Pictures through Buena Vista Features, but it was developed and created by Walt Disney Television Animation, or Disney Toon Studios, who was responsible for the Disney animated work for television as well as the string of Disney animated sequels released straight to home video. Set in the heat of World War II London, the movie is inspired by the epilogue of Barry's book Peter and Wendy. Instead of Wendy, though, we meet her practical daughter Jane, who doesn't seem to have time for her mother's stories even after she is whisked away by Captain Hook and his pirates to Neverland. The production of this movie was based at Disney Animation Canada, which prior to its 2000 shutdown stopped work on the picture in roughly 1999, when it was moved to both Disney Studio Australia and Japan, with Cornerstone Animation being put at the helm for direction. It was eventually all sent back to Disney Movie Toons, where it was prepped for future release. That's right, 4 different studios touched this little sequel. Catherine Beaumont, who you might remember is the original voice of Wendy, was brought back to play the role. But before the release, Kathy Soisi was brought in and replaced to all of Beaumont's lines. Student of the original Captain Hook actor Han Conrad, Corey Burton was tasked with bringing the iconic villain back to life. And since the proximity to the original actor, he could do an almost perfect impersonation of Conrad's Hook. Like us here at Open Dreams, you may have noticed some missing and changed aspects to Neverland in the almost 50-year gap between the two movies. Most notably is the absence of the native people of Neverland, which the studio felt would be tone deaf to leave them in as they were originally, and we here have to agree. Also, a small change was in the design of the mermaids, who suddenly gained bras to tone down the apparent sexual undertones that were present in the original film. Yeah, I know. Despite grossing $110 million in box office, it was a critical failure and was forgotten by fans by the time it released on home video just a few months later in August of 2002. It is important to note that this is only one of 6 Disney sequels to get motion picture releases. Can you guess the other 5? We'll be right back after this with our guest Hannah Katz.
Hello, you wonderful human being. How do I know you're a wonderful human being? Well, if you're hearing this message, it means you're listening to a certain POV podcast, and that makes you awesome. Thanks for your support. This is Pat Edwards from the Let's Rewatch podcast, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm an author. My latest project is a new 5th edition D&D campaign book called The Red Opera. Inspired from the musical album and stage show of the same name, The Red Opera sends you on a twisting saga through dark and dangerous city teeming with intrigue, magic, death, and betrayal. And warlocks. This book is lousy with warlocks and all the mischief that comes with them. So here's what I need from you, you delightful slice of podcast listener cake. Go to the pre-launch page on Kickstarter and simply enter your email to follow the project. You're not committing to anything. You're just saying you'd like an email notification when the Kickstarter goes live, and then you can browse the truly outstanding reward tiers we've added to decide if you'd like to support the project. To find the pre-launch page, you can either go to theredopera.com, or if you go to my Twitter handle @thepatedwards, my current pinned tweet has a link. Again, thank you so much, you beautiful spoonful of human sugar. Love, Pat.
Welcome back, dreamers. We have a magical guest with us today. She's a good Judy of mine who is, I don't even know if it's more passionate about Disney than I am. I have Hannah Katz with me today. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi. I've been so excited to get you on the show. I've been begging you for a while, and we finally are able to do it.
Yay! Small blessings from quarantine.
Small blessings from quarantine. Also, like, I don't think you guys realize how you only have the early episodes of the show because of Hannah. She was my editor for the first few episodes. It was a huge help, and we all need that friend who can be brutally honest with us, and that Hannah is that friend for me. So, Hannah, why don't you tell the audience at home a little bit about yourself and what role Disney has played into your life up to now?
Sure. So I'm a Florida kid, and I feel like that's so important to start with when I talk about Disney. So for me, like, Disney is as much about the movies as the parks. And, you know, I've never had an annual pass in my life. My mom was, like, always taking me on those Florida resident deals back when you could go to the parks for, like, 4 days for $99.
Yeah.
God bless.
God bless.
And then as I grew older, like, Disney just kept sticking in my life, the parks wise. And then, you know, I've had friends who work there now and stuff, and I'm really lucky that, like, at one point I've been living in Tokyo for a year, so I've done Tokyo Disney, which was, like, awesome, and I got to go to Shanghai Disney for one day, which was really cool too. And then in, like, my regular life, I mean, I was a kid and I had red hair, so Ariel was my whole existence for, like, a good year of my life. And I loved all of the movies. I still have my VHSs. My mom recently moved houses, and I advocated very hard to keep my original, like, TV with the VHS inside, and I still have it in my room in her new house now, and, like, all of my VHSs.
I love that.
Yeah, so I think, like, I've watched, there are certain Disney movies that I don't know how the color has not leached out of the tape. And, like, between that and, like, Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, and so, like, Hercules, Hunchback, this movie, Return to Neverland, which is, like, such an unlikely candidate, but very watched on my VHS.
Yeah. Yeah,
and there's a few others.
Yeah, I love that you brought this one up to me, because when you were like, okay, I'm back, we can do this now, I feel we can do it. And you brought this one to me, and I went, oh my God, because one, Disney's sequels for a long time have gotten the shittest rap. Also, because through the Renaissance, all the Disney sequels were a straight to VHS bucket for new money. Like, they just wanted money to be thrown at them. And while those are, you know, Aladdin, all three of the Aladdin movies bop, the Lion King movies, oddly, all also are great. You know, and we were talking about TV series for a lot of them and things. This was coming out, this was just after Disney Renaissance. Like, this was greenlit in the Disney Renaissance. So, like, at the end, and so it's really interesting that we're talking about this. And literally last week's episode was on Peter Pan. And I recorded that one months ago. And so this one we're working in, because it's the first sequel we're talking about. But I think this is an effective sequel of Disney revisiting some of their most iconic material in a way that they were looking at, how do we honor it? How do we make it look like the original?
Yeah.
But utilize what was then making Disney great, because the Renaissance, Disney had always been big. And Disney had also faltered many times. They almost closed in the 80s. It was just a thing. And so for this to return to that in a way, because we'd had Rescuers Down Under, which did not do well, but is a wonderful movie. We've done, you know, that episode on it. But
yeah,
you know,
I think I edited that episode.
You did actually.
Yeah.
And so what is interesting about this one is it was a financial success. But it wasn't a critical success. But I remember seeing it and adoring it. So let's launch in. So Peter Pan is an iconic character, problematic and non-problematic itself as a character and itself as a property. You know, people hold on to him, but he's an icon. I love the first couple days that the parks were closed, even though we're recording this in quarantine. We're about 3 weeks in at this point. We're all itching.
We're on April 5th, so it's a really weird time where a lot of Disney employees that are non-union have finally been furloughed. for better or worse. And we're seeing, like, truly no employees on property anymore, pretty much at this point.
But, like, in the beginning, we were still making memes. It was funny. It was a joke. Everybody thought it would be a couple weeks. And that those first couple days, the joke was the parks are closed, but Peter Pan's flight still has a 75-minute wait.
Which is my favorite joke. It's my favorite joke,
Well,
honestly.
and it came from, I didn't realize it came from, there was a glitch in the My Disney Experience app, because, of course, why wouldn't there be? It's the My Disney Experience app. And so, but I think it's funny, but I think that is actually a testament to this property and why Peter Pan works. I mean, we've had the musical, which is not a Disney property at all.
No.
We have the novels. We've had Peter and the Starcatcher on Broadway, which is tangentially Disney because they produced it. We have all these things. Peter Pan has never left a pop culture lexicon. Ever. It is always present, whether it's the idea of him. Tinkerbell has come to represent several generation of bad bitches. And like, I say Tinkerbell replaced Tweety Bird for a lot of women because Tweety was on everything in the 90s. And whether you like Looney Tunes or not, you had that Tweety Bird shirt, you had the Tweety Bird jeans, you had the Tweety Bird hat. And Tinkerbell, I think Tinkerbell replaced that. And she is still one of the longest wait times for a meet and greet on property. So, why do you think?
Well, I was just old enough to catch that. Like, there was like a So I think I was like maybe too old, but I read them anyway. There was this beautiful novelization of Tinkerbell that I think my mom or my grandma got for me because the art on the cover was just like gorgeous. They're like these thick books. I should have looked this up before we started, but like I can still think about them, and they later became like the foundation for that. Like I think it was like Disney Junior or whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah, the Fairies of Neverland movies.
Yeah. So I had the books before that came out because like someone bought me them for the illustrations, and I'm like 99% sure I read them. Also, it's been a few years, but I think no matter what, like the lexicon of her has always been in there. And so you're either getting like, I think also, so Disney has this thing that they like to do where they like to, in the past at least, market to boys or girls.
Yes.
Very recently, it's been both, but in like previous decades, it was definitely boys or girls. And so because you had Tink and Peter, it was, I think, one of their first really successful, like, oh, the boys can go right next to the girls. And, like, we can market to both without marketing to both. So I think that's part of the reason why they've become, like, Disney character icons, potentially.
I also think it's this idea of adulthood is really shitty, especially in especially in our like terrible capitalist society. And so it's one of those things, that for better or worse, Disney is part of, but like, I'm also going to let the magic speak before the money speaks. Cause that's just me. I need it. But it's that idea of Peter doesn't grow up, but what happens is as we get older, we can see the faults in not growing up. And so while we can have this icon of reminding ourselves to be childlike, because that's something that I'm going to bring up with Wendy in the second movie that is really important, that we also suddenly understand Captain Hook a little bit more as we get older. Foppish gay icon, Captain Hook.
What a sentence.
Foppish gay icon, Captain Hook. So it's one of those things that I think while we then grow away from idolizing Peter, I'm going to leave gay culture as a separate part of that because that is something very different.
We could do a whole episode on queer villains. Queer-coded villains.
Well, queer-coded villains, but also the idea of like the Peter Pan syndrome, or what is it? Peter Pan syndrome, and how, especially with gay men, it presents. But with this, I think we can look at that youthfulness of Peter and the imagination and those things of like and it's, to me, it is the center of Disney magic, and it's the center of adults who love Disney, what we love about it. And it's even though we know how the magic works at that point, we see behind the magic, we still love it.
I would totally argue that part of the experience of Disney as an adult is nostalgia, right? But also part of it is that you don't have to be nostalgic. Like they always, like whenever they're looking for volunteers at a show, there's always like one volunteer who's a kid, of course, because like you want, like I'm thinking of specifically of Festival of the Lion King in Animal Kingdom for theme park humans out there. So there's like 4 sections of the show, and like I think 2 of them are always kids and 2 of them are always adults. And part of the joke is that like they make the adult man who is like the most masked butch human dad that they can find do something silly, and we all get this giggle out of that. But then part of it is also that like, oh, you are treated the same as a kid in a way where you are not. You get to be like a little free, a little irresponsible, and they really hope you're irresponsible, so you buy more merchandise. If I'm being real.
Oh yeah. It's why the pass holders exist. It's because they know people are going to buy things over and over again. But I also think, it's that equalizer of age of why you can also. I love seeing grandparents being really goofy with grandkids or great grandkids, because it's like, especially for the grandparents, because some of them, like my parents have always lived in a world where Disney Disney properties existed, because my dad was born in 54, my mom was born in 55, and so Disney's always been present on the television. And so I think a lot of that is the magic of why we keep coming back to stories like Peter Pan and why they're still relevant. And so I think it was interesting and timely that in a world who is months out, like a year out of 9/11, like we have just had 9/11 happen for people in the U.S., even though that was a huge international moment for a lot of things, to have this moment set in World War II that putting a world where we suddenly meet Wendy's daughter, Jane, who is pragmatic. She is sensible. She is realist, because she is a child of World War I and is now living through World War II. Like, she was born in the wake of World War I. And so she has only known a country recovering from war and then going back into war. And then to have Wendy as this like adult who wants her children to have this magic, because at the end of the day, it is also keeping them entertained and like safe in a family during a wartime when their family could be ripped apart at any point, which they are about to be. That's the whole premise for. I recommend anyone who has not watched this movie. It is on Disney Plus. Pause us right here. No, it's okay. We can wait. We'll wait. I will wait. And then go watch it. Go watch it. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, great. I'm glad you liked it. I hope you liked it. Yeah, you better have liked it. You back. Thanks. I hope you brought some popcorn for everyone. But, it's this moment of that they're on the night before that Jane and her brother Danny are about to be taken away to go live out on a farm where most kids, this is the Narnia thing. This is, the Pevensies get taken away. This is those moments.
It's very of that time.
And there's something, I gotta tell you, I saw this in theaters, and then I don't think I watched it again until you and I were talking about it, and I watched it about a week ago for us to film. And that moment when it's, the bombers are happening, it's the night before, and then the ship bursts forth over the home. And it's such a good moment. So, Hannah, I'm gonna walk us through a little bit about why you picked this movie. About why this one picked for you.
So, there are a few reasons why I picked this movie. So, the movies I was gonna offer, because I only offered this one, and while I was like deciding them, like finalizing my decisions, were like this one, and I was like, great, I love this one. Were because so Matt was like very kind and is generously sharing his Disney Plus with me, and this popped up, and I was like, yeah. But my choices were Return to Neverland. They were going to be this, Meet the Robinsons, because that's my other underrated Disney bop.
So good.
And you had already done Hercules, so I was thinking about maybe doing Hunchback, but then I was like 99% sure you had done that. Which I'm not sure if you have released.
Yeah, we haven't.
That.
No, we haven't done. We haven't recorded Hunchback yet. We've released Hercules, but no one's even come to me for Hunchback yet. So
well, because I was like, I knew that we had talked about you potentially doing it at another time, and I wasn't sure, because Matt and I probably, even before quarantine, we probably talked every other day. So it's gotten worse. So sometimes I can't remember what's planned and what's like done.
It's so true. It's so true. I also talk a lot. So
It's great. I love it. That's why we're friends. So those were like my choices because I also want to be a special snowflake and pick something that not everybody will pick. Slash, I know that this show has like a lot of potential to go on for a while, so I wanted to pick something that like maybe people who are not as insane as me would pick, so that's part of the reason. But looking back at this movie, I'm really glad I picked it because it has this thing that I think is so funny, having just watched like Frozen 2 the other day, which is, okay, so specifically it made me remember because you were talking about like, so we go through World War One is happening and then the pirate ship bursts on. And if you watch it, I love it so much, but you can definitely tell that this is like, we are using a new animation technique, right? Yes. So we've gone from this super 2D style, hand-drawn looking style to like what looks like almost a 3D model bursting onto the screen. And it made me think of Frozen 2 the other day because I saw Frozen 2 in theaters twice because I was like so enamored, slash I was living in Japan, so I saw it in Japanese once because I was like, when will I get this opportunity? But I was thinking about the scene, Frozen 2, spoiler alert, coming on, where they're about to smush Arendelle with the wave, and it looks so real.
It looks so real. It looks like it was filmed like in real life and superimposed. It was dramatic. It is so good.
It literally, every time I watch it, even when I watched it on my laptop screen, it takes my breath away. And it made me realize that like, oh, this is probably what this moment felt like, right? Like, I look back at all these old movies that I remember thinking were so realistic, and now they look so not. Like, and that's as I imagine, though, what that felt like when that 3D pirate ship really, like, busts onto that screen. So I think I'm glad I chose it because it's a really interesting point in animation for this studio. Like, I know that you mentioned it's very much a callback to the old Peter Pan, which it is. There's a lot of... So the book is... The other reason I think this sequel does so well is because it's actually based on a real book that Barry wrote, right? This is not like an invention the way that some of the other Disney sequels are. And I also believe this one was not animated at Disney Toon Studios. So for people who are not insane, Walt Disney has many studios that they run, and Disney Toon is kind of where a lot of the sequels get animated through. And I don't think this one was animated at Disney Toon. And yeah, go Matt, do it.
So you're good. So it started at Disney Toon, which Disney Toon also doesn't always do bad work. Like Goofy movie came out and so, but like those are also not typically considered as part of the normal canon of movies, which I have a problem with. But like here we are. But what happened was.
Because there's a bop of a song in Mulan too that if you don't think that Disney Toon is good, then we're gonna fight.
So this movie originally started under the name Peter and Jane because it's based on the book Peter and Wendy, and it was being done through Disney movie Toon / Disney movie Premiere, which is what they had become. And it was being done at Disney Animation Canada. They had bought an animation studio in Canada, and they were doing this. But then the Canadian studio shut down. They closed it and moved it, split it between Disney Animation Australia, Disney Animation Japan, and that's how this movie came together. And so this movie was actually supposed to come out in fall of 90 or like in 99, 2000. And so but it ended up stopping at Cornerstone Animation, which is who did the animation direction, and then it moved back eventually to a Toon Disney release.
Wow!
So
oh my God!
It almost didn't happen. It almost didn't happen. It shut down several times. It moved, and so we're lucky. This movie, I think, even looks as cohesive as it does.
I was just gonna say, God bless character sheets. So also, if you're not insane, usually a character sheet is given per character, and it's a character drawn in a few consistent poses / angles. And this is just because, like, when you're hand drawing, obviously different people have different styles. And so this helps artists kind of capture whatever the lead animator decides this person looks like, even though it's not them drawing every single frame.
Right.
Yeah, it's like amazing because this movie does look a little different at some points. Looking back, not gonna lie. But it's like you said, it's pretty dang similar for having been touched by, I think you said 4 or 5 different studio names.
Yeah, well, and especially like Peter and Hook and Tink look, they look like just a newer version of their original. They look a little flatter, and Jane looks a little more three-dimensional. She looks more a little realized because she also has different proportions than Wendy was. Wendy was typical 1950s proportions, late 40s proportions, and Jane is very late 90s proportions in the shape of her head, in the shape of the body, and like how. So they're just an update because they were using contemporary girls as reference for Jane versus using 1950s girls for Jane because it also didn't really fit with her aesthetic of this kind of adventure.
She's a Spunky's 90 girl if I ever saw one.
Oh, she is that's the thing is there are certain things, while I love this movie, there are some imperfect things that come from when this movie was made and some of the bad habits Disney had in filmmaking at this time. And so while they're not bad things, so we'll get to those as we kind of pick this apart. But I think there's it's another one where I revisit and go, God, there is so much good to talk about with this movie that anything that is the quote unquote bad. And when I say bad, it's just I'm being nitpicky because I have made a life of watching Disney movies. And it's like I rewatched Onward last night, and while I loved it just as much as I did for the first time, I found a couple things that I went, okay, it's still fine because I still love it. But it's one of those things that. A lot of my issues that I think we'll talk about in a little bit all come from Disney making this when Disney feels unshakable, if you will. And they've got a lot of money. So, despite there being trouble inside of the kingdom from the outside, the kingdom was growing in a very Eisner-ish and gilded way. Animal Kingdom had just opened. There were just lots of things that were happening company-wide that while we knew there was money issues, they were doing more than most people in their realm of existence. And so, I think there's a lot of good things. So what are some things, Hannah, whether it's story-wise or just things about this movie that really stand out for you as like an exemplary film?
Yeah, so maybe this is not real. I don't know if this counts, but what really rocketed me back more than anything watching this movie was the beautiful covers that happen of like where she's like gently singing Faith and Trust and Pixie Dust while like the I forget the artist name and I looked it up specifically before this, but the music that is scoring this film is great. There is like, every Disney movie has like that one song that the characters sing, which is like a really fun one in this, but it's not as beautiful as this like score that they've brought in to do that, which is just like heartbreakingly like, and I think it perfectly like explains Jane. Also, like I wish that I could like play this for everybody, but it's like very like adult but childhoody at the same time, which is I would that's the central conflict of the whole shebang. So that's probably a number one thing for me. I also love this movie does a good job of I watched this movie after watching Peter Pan because I knew we were probably going to talk about both. But this was like a week or two ago, so I'm going to have some things wrong. But I think it does a very good job of invoking the visual language of the first one without totally copying it. Like, I mean, the most obvious example is that they're both, like, Wendy and Jane are both in nightgowns, but one's in a blue nightgown and one's in a purple nightgown, and they do look different. And, like, Wendy's costume is still blue, but it doesn't feel like, oh, she's still in the same dress. So I think this movie does a lot of good visual storytelling. For example, the little baby lost boy and Danny, we as an audience, even as a kid, okay, kids understand symbolism. I'm not trying to say they don't, but even as a kid, I very clearly understood this connection, that these two small humans are holding a similar place in her heart and things like this. And I think also it does like a really good job of like kids who want to be grown up, which was also me. They have a very interesting view of what grown up is. And I think this movie does it really well. So I would say that those kind of three things, that music, which I love, the similar like invoking of imagery throughout the film, and then like what kids think a grown up is, are like my three favorite parts of this movie.
Yeah, I think for me, something that I did notice is the score was the first thing of one. It's very grand in a way that the Renaissance films had a very grand score, because the thing about the kind of gold, silver age Disney films, they have a very score of their time, and it sounds like their time. And I think the score,
so good.
And they're beautiful. And the thing about Peter Pan is, while it feels like a musical, it was not a musical. At no point was it a musical, but it had those big 50s choirs singing behind them. The studio, they felt like an MGM era musical. Because this is when it was
that
being
is
made.
true.
And so, but this, I feel like they tried to capture some of those moments. But for me, that's where I was going to talk about the pop songs that come in here detract from that just a little, because I'm just like, all right, thanks, BB Mac. We got a boy band singing a song here. But like, they were utilizing the music of the time that was going to sell a soundtrack, because this is when Disney had really gotten into home music, like people buying albums to like re-listen to. And so, but I love the instrumental score of this. I think it's really nice. And I love that every important song from the original film had a new version of it in this that didn't feel like a cover. It felt like an evolution of that original song.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I never felt like, what is it? I love it personally. I was like still Disney Channel aged when Ashley Tisdale came out and did her cover of Little Mermaid stuff, and it was like the good old music videos that used to play between the shows, and those are bops, but they're not like necessarily telling the story in a new way. Right. But you're like getting the fun of the music, which is a good and valuable thing in a different way. And this doesn't feel like that. Like you said, it's totally an evolution for story purposes.
Yeah. And I think something with the original version of Captain Hook, you kind of understood that he understood his place in this grand scheme of this magical world where he and Peter have to eternally fight. And that is something that will always happen. And that we had the natives that were like this other third party that existed. And we had the mermaids that existed. But it was this eternal conflict that would always be between Peter Pan and Captain Hook. Which is why it made sense that they came to take Wendy. Because like, this is just a war game. It's a game between them. No one's truly hurt, which is where like Hook's obsession comes from. Because, he lost his hand, and this whole idea that there's one thing that I don't love, but it's kooky and catchy, and we'll get to it. But it all feels like a war game. But in this version, even though we know time isn't really passing in Neverland, because that's Neverland, that's just a thing that exists. Captain Hook's getting tired. You can tell he is wearing down. He's getting weary. Like he's like what happens when you're an adult that stops aging, but like you have the older soul who is kind of have weariness, where a child's soul gets tired, but they don't get weary. And so Hook feels a little more like feels more like a Renaissance villain in ways in this movie, because he's starting to be devilish, like dangerously
he's
underhanded.
A little more ruthless, for sure.
He's way more ruthless in this, and the pirates feel a little scarier. And even though they're all a little jovial still, and you still love Smee, there is an actual danger that feels present to Hook in this one, which I actually like, because the world has evolved, and so they've evolved some of these characters, but Peter Pan has not changed at all. And I actually think that's a really important storytelling thing. With this one, and
well, I do feel like maybe Peter's been watered down a little bit in this one, I have to say, and I think that's for two main reasons. One is that we were way more tolerant as an audience of like evilness in our kid characters before. Like I think one of the most famous shots, which I just was like, I had no idea where it came from until I watched the original. Or rewatch the original, is like that one where his face is basically black and you can just see his eyes, and then there's like Ching next to him and he looks creepy as heck. And like Peter Pan from Return to Neverland would never be allowed to look like that. Like he has to look young and angelic. And then the other reason I think that he's a little more watered down is Peter Pan is very much obviously the story of Peter Pan, or I would say like Return to Neverland is the story of Jane. So just we get less, it's not him anymore. That's why it's not called Peter Pan Return to Neverland. It's called Return to Neverland.
Yeah, no, I will agree with you, because this is definitely Jane's story, because it's about Jane, because Peter would have never come looking for her, because, like, it's also obvious Peter stopped coming to the house at some point. Like, that's the thing is, like, Hook goes and finds Wendy, which I'm like, how did he find Wendy? But we're not going to pick that apart. But that idea that, like, Peter has stopped, even though he obviously is still affectionate of Wendy, and he still cares in his boyishness. He remembers her in the same way that like a boy remembers something that's happening, which is not well. And so, you know, it's that thing of he obviously stopped coming to the house at some point. Because, you know, which we saw in, is it in the original film that we see her older at the very end?
No, we don't, because we just see her and her mom, who, by the way, I think has... Oh, this might be wrong, but I think has the color that Jane later gets, which is an interesting thing.
Jane's style is also similar to her mother's, but also in a costume history kind of way. It's just what women were wearing at the time as well. Cool. So, okay. But it is in the same color that Mrs. Darling was. Like, she has the same feeling of Mrs. Darling, but still keeping that quintessential youthfulness that Jane didn't lose, or Wendy didn't lose, which is important to her character. It is so important. But she even holds on to Peter in a way that Peter didn't hold on to her. And Peter's suddenly much more, he's interested in Jane the same way that he was interested in Wendy. And so it's just this idea of this other, this challenging other. And I think it's also a really interesting, subtle change in like how women viewed themselves and women viewed their roles, because this is coming out of like women working in the 80s and 90s and being like executives. And so like Jane goes in with this new sensibility of like, no, I'm not going to be your mom. Back the fuck up. That's not what I'm here for. That's not what this is about. And that it's only when her like sensibility that the one child looks like Danny is like triggered of this thing, and that because like Wendy would never have taken up even any sort of thing with Captain Hook. She would have never agreed to help him. Like,
she would have very much put her nose in her
and Jane is very pragmatic in that way. She's like, oh, I'm going to get to go home. This is just something that's going to happen. It's part of this game. This is going to continue to happen. It's fine. Nobody's going to get hurt. But I think it's important that, and so I think a lot of those are what stuck and felt good and felt. There's so much nostalgia in this film. The fact that they animated the mermaids in the same way, with the exception of they all have bustiers this time.
They have bras this time. It was very scandalous. This is like, I did like 2 minutes of research like 2 weeks ago when I thought we were first recording, and this was like the very scandalous thing. This made me laugh so much. Which is so interesting, considering this is like when Britney Spears is making videos, but it's also like after Million Moms was started, and we had just had the Southern Baptist. We had the Southern Baptist Convention's boycott of Disney because of gay days and what they called the dark days of Disney, which has a different connotation on us now, but they were discussing Pocahontas, Hercules, and Hunchback. America has some difficult problems with letting people who are not white on screen, That's what it seems like. Well, and so we'll also talk about that, because there is something big missing from this that was in the original. But we don't get any Native Americans, and the only hint of them we get is at the very beginning in one of my favorite animated sequences from a beauty standpoint. Tinkerbell flies through the clouds, and we get this shadow figure of a lot of the characters from the first movie who we are not going to see in this movie largely. And I think it's a really great way to address that this movie has a larger past, while still, because now there are new kids in the movie theater who maybe have seen Peter Pan, maybe have not seen Peter Pan, maybe are young enough that if they haven't watched the movie 400 times, they know that this character exists, but they don't really remember anything about it.
Right.
So it's a really good way to both be like, yes, it's there, and then not make you be like, oh, are they coming the whole movie? Because John and Michael are also not in this movie, which is like not as important as, not portraying Americans or Native Americans as humans and not caricatures, but it's like another thing we could note.
I think it's because we probably expect John and Michael both are like, oh, Wendy, that thing never happened. We didn't go. It's fine. Don't be weird. Because then I think it would become the conflict of Wendy, Michael, and John, and it's about Jane. And so, but we do see a few times we see the TPs in large shots and wide shots. We don't see them. Yeah. There are two shots. But this is the same time when Tarzan was coming out. And so Tarzan, they made the decision to remove all African characters from Tarzan because they were addressing that Disney had a past with a racist legacy and that their source material was also heavily racist. And so it was just better not to. And so I'm assuming that a lot of that happened with this as well because J.M. Barrie also heavily racist legacy with the native characters that are in the novel. But what I think something is really important that they finally put in, which I believe is in the first book. I'm guilty that I've never actually read the Peter Pan books. I read Peter and the Starcatcher, which was much later, and used J.M. Barrie's like unpublished works. But
I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, because it's credited as J.M. Barrie and the writer of Peter and the Starcatcher. I'm not sure why. I believe it's based on unpublished manuscripts. Not sure. But yeah, I've never read the original, but and it's in the musical, because it's one of those weird audience interaction moments of the I believe in fairies moment, which is we see Jane go, I don't even believe in fairies. And it's one of those things of like, Tinkerbell's right in front of you. How do you not believe? And then we see Tinkerbell like slowly dying throughout the movie until Jane has to go, I believe in fairies. I do. And I remember the movie theater was packed when we saw this movie and everybody just started yelling, I believe in fairies. It was a really nice moment. I cried as like a 17-year-old boy.
So nice.
Yeah. Like it's one of those things that was like, that was a nice moment of recapturing. It's one of those magical moments that I think is so on brand for Disney. It's on brand for like Peter Pan as a Disney and non-Disney property. And so I think, I think it's that was a nice moment that they chose to put in. But I also think that's that turning point for Jane of when she fully embraces that she has been refuting what's been in front of her the whole time. Like she's been questioning the validity.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it.
Like she's been questioning the validity of magic and like this world that she is literally witnessing happen in front of her this whole time, to finally we then see her, after Peter, who kind of quickly is like, you're dead to me, canceled. Jane's canceled.
I guess he does kind of cut that quick, doesn't he?
And it's real quick, but like also I would be really mad if Captain Hook was like, thank you for leading us, my dear. And Peter Pan's like, crap, I hate you. Can't trust girls. But, to then have her show up on the in the crow's nest, which is that spot where we first see Peter Pan in the original movie when he comes to save Wendy and the Lost Boys. So, it's that there's a little of that duality moment there that I think it's evident the filmmakers of this were holding the original property very close to them. In a way that is it's really nice, and in a way that like we don't always see when people make sequels. Also because now the name of the game is franchising, not making a good story just to make a good story. That's so true. And so, but I think this is one where they went, you know what, we're probably not going to make another one, so let's just make this a really important movie as well. And it'll add into that canon, but we're not going to have to build something else of it, which they've made a franchise out of this, but more in the fairies than just this.
Yeah. But and I also think that absolutely. And I also think one of the great things is that, like, and even J.M. Barrie does this, right? Like, the reason we get to, I think in the original book, even Wendy's granddaughter is, like, mentioned by name. Because, like, you know, he can come back as much as you want, and he's still the same guy. Like you mentioned earlier, he's got the same character. Like, we can throw anything at him, and we get to see how this person we already like is gonna do it. So, yeah.
Well, and it's one of those things that, like, it was an easy sell because people liked Peter Pan. And so I think having him in this movie was the selling point. Because I remember the poster was super simple. It was Peter and Jane back to back with a duo colored background, and that was the poster. Or it was the poster was his shadow. Like, it was real simple, real effective marketing that people went, well, we can take the kids to see another Peter Pan movie. This is fine. And then the next year, the live-action Peter Pan with Jason Isaacs as Captain Hook came out. And with Jeremy Sumpter's
Oh,
Peter
my God,
Pan.
that was the next year.
It was literally the next year. And so it was one of those, like, and Hook had been probably 6 years before this, 6 or 8 years before this. And so we continually kind of have Peter Pan things popping up. And people will always go see them because they know what the Peter Pan story is. Like, when, for better or worse, when NBC did Peter Pan Live, people were going to watch it because they know Peter Pan. Like, it's something they know. And so it
also does wonder really well, right? Like, this this movie and character and series and concept are very much, like, good at, everybody likes the first time that you fly, right? That's why it's such a big part of both movies.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because Disney had also just made Cinderella 2, like, that came out the year before this, straight to DVD, straight to VHS. And so
I have that VHS too.
And so it's interesting that we're seeing these moments of that they're able to revisit these classic storybooks in a way that will sell them, but they aren't particularly good. People aren't in love with it because, like, Rotten Tomatoes, this is like a 50% roughly with people. It's got like a 5.8 on. It's got like a 5.8 on IMDb, which I guess I can understand. I do also find that Disney fans are particularly critical in ways that fans of other things aren't. I'm gonna leave that there. I'm not calling anybody out, but it's one of those things that and this is the same time we've got 101 Dalmatians 2 coming out to DVD. Tarzan 2 was coming out. Lady and the Tramp was just coming out. Lady and the Tramp 2. So Disney was capitalizing on these classic stories and how they could sell them to a new set of kids because people had money. They were coming out of, like, the 90s peak in the economy and all these things. So I'm wondering if this was just part of that to capture all of that nostalgia, and this was the one that made it to cinema.
Well, this is so interesting too, which is, like, something I never thought about, because I have Cinderella 2 and Tarzan 2 on VHS also. And they are sequels that are not really sequels. So they are 4 episodes of a TV show stacked together. Right. So if you, I think there was, like, did Little Mermaid have a TV show? Is that who I'm thinking of?
In the 90s, Little Mermaid, Hercules, Aladdin, and Tarzan all had TV shows.
Yeah, so their sequels are actually, I think, testing for that, or some kind of version of that. Because if you said that Tarzan had one, then that's really interesting too. Versus Neverland Peter Pan got one. Lady and the Tramps and Lion Kings are, like, proper actual sequels as opposed to 4 TV shows put together in a sequel package. So that's really different and interesting. And I kind of wonder why. And also, like you mentioned, this has theatrical release, which is so different. So yeah, that's crazy.
I think home video was at a peak at this point. Also, we were getting into DVD, and if you can push out property on and show that you're supporting a new technology, like what do they call it, platform?
That's true.
Because I learned yesterday watching Defunctland that Disney fought against home movies for a long time. Yeah, shout out to Defunctland and Yesterworld. They are just, and especially now that Defunctland is doing their TV series, it's it's so good. And so this one is particularly about how Disney Disney felt that they didn't want people to be able to watch movies at home, that because they were doing that like re-release in cinemas every 5 to 10 years of original movies, which is why you've got movies like Snow White that's made as much money as it has, or Mary Poppins, or Cinderella, because it was being re-released every 5 to 10 years in theaters and people were going to see it. Because, like, you know, people who then suddenly had kids could then go take their kids, or, you know, it's this thing. And so they actually took Sony to court for Betamax and VHS and lost, and then almost immediately, and then they almost immediately released 6 classic Disney animated shorts on VHS, and then quickly got the Disney Channel and all of these things they started doing because they bought into it. But
I did not know any of this.
Yeah, but
that's so crazy.
It's so crazy, but I didn't realize that they had a group of movies called the Untouchables, and this was how they formed the Disney Vault, was things would come out of the vault to go back into movie theaters. And so Peter Pan was one of the movies that was one of the Untouchables that was supposed to never see VHS release. And it did in the 90s. So this was just before Michael Eisner came in. Like probably 6 years before Michael Eisner. And so 5 years, because it was like 89. Yeah.
Maybe you know that is Song of the South on that list.
Song of the South is on a different list for different reasons.
Great. Which I recommend it not be on anybody's list of anything. So.
Yeah, it's I might get to that one day. We might do an episode on that one. I don't know. We'll see. I probably will elect to not work for the company at that point if I do that episode.
Yeah. I think that Splash Mountain will never leave the parks, so I think that will be in the vocabulary of people who talk about Disney. And also, we've talked about this before, but I think it's WB has Bugs Bunny, right?
Yes, Warner Brothers, yeah.
So Warner Brothers does a little disclaimer on their old shorts that they stream or that you can find on the internet, which talks about the racial insensitivity in them. So it's really interesting that,
Disney, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Disney actually did for the Disney Plus release. They opted to do that instead of cutting content, because originally they were going to cut content from Lady and the Tramp, Dumbo, and Aristocats. And they opted to just put the plate on instead of cutting, which I think is much smarter. Deal with it head on, address that it was an issue, and then move on.
Yeah.
And so, I think, but dealing with that, especially because it was 1943 to then when home video was releasing. Now, there was a Canadian home video release that did happen. That is, the copy that you can get on DVD is a rip from that VHS. I believe it was like 1993. It had a limited VHS, and I believe the UK also got a release of Song of the South as well. So, but yeah, there were these, and so, but the other ones, it was weird because it was like Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Jungle Book, Aristocats.
These are
Peter
movies
Pan,
I would have never guessed on the list.
101 Dalmatians. Yeah, and I think it's because they saw that, like, every time Mary Poppins was re-released in theaters, they made like $300,000 to $3 million that time. Oh yeah, they re-released Mary Poppins in like 1987 and made an additional like $3.5 million from that release. So, and Mary Poppins,
we all love Julie Andrews.
we love the Queen of Genovia. We love her.
Oh my god.
Julie Andrews, please never leave us ever. I love that she's like during this quarantine, she's making content. She has a YouTube show and a podcast that she is trucking right on through. But I guess you hit a certain age where when someone comes to you and goes, "Hey, there's this content you can create from your own home," and she goes, "I would love to." I feel like that's that. But I think it's also awesome because we can keep. That means like I can have Julie Andrews read bedtime stories to my kids, and like that's just really fucking cool. That's just really cool.
It is.
But I think all of those things of like why Disney sat on this, but I'm interested to see, I would love for them to either do a second series, or I'll look into when their Untouchables list became a touchable list. And I'm wondering if it happened when Disney Channel used to be a premium channel like HBO. So there was original content and movies and no commercials. But it was a very expensive channel to pay for. And then in the mid-'80s, it transitioned into or late '80s, it transitioned into a basic cable. So it came with a cable package. And then commercials happened. And I remember as a kid, every Saturday and every Sunday night, they would show movies. That's how I saw Alice in Wonderland for the first time, because there is a 45 or 60-minute version of Alice in Wonderland that's been whittled down so it's 90 minutes. And they whittled it down, and so it's exactly 90 minutes with commercials.
Right.
And so that one was on all the time, because they used to do those things where, it's a free cable weekend, plug cable in and you can get Disney Channel for free. And so I'm wondering if when that transitioned to, and Eisner had come in and they were looking for this, I'm gesticulating the money fingers for everyone at home, since this is not a visual podcast. You could do a little ASMR. Just money fingers.
Money.
Money. Club 96.
Oh my God.
For my Drag Race fans. But, I'm wondering if it simply had something to do with when people, because that transitioned away from the Disney family no longer had someone in the executive boardroom who was family. So I'm wondering if it just became an idea that let's put them on TV for people to watch it. So then we'll do a VHS release in a few years. And so instead of catching Peter Pan once every 6 months on Disney Channel, you can then have Peter Pan for $24.99 in your home. And, because that's also when the clamshells started, VHS were still $25 a piece. So,
and that's
they're
what I
making
was
money.
So surprised by. Yeah, because I know that, my collection doesn't have everything. And also, thank God it doesn't, because it doesn't, and it's still a big old collection.
Yeah.
Just, we moved houses, and I think just my tapes took up, 3 boxes, which was wild.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I know that that's a thing. But, yeah, I mean, it's a great thing, because also you are giving it to kids who don't know, right? So I had Return to Neverland too. I could have sat in a movie theater, I'm sure, but I was a young little baby. I would not have really wanted to sit in a movie theater. And because of that, I have this loyalty to the brand that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I mean specifically to the Peter Pan brand inside of everything.
Right. Yeah.
So this is so interesting to me, because these are lots of things I did not know about the distribution of the series.
Well, and then it makes sense to me that shortly after this, let's see when that first. Shortly after this was when the first, 2008, 6 years later was when the first Tinkerbell movie came out. Straight to VHS or to home video. Let me rephrase, to home video. And so then we would have one every year for 6 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So for the first
6 of them.
Six of them for the first 3 years, they were released once a year, and then they went to once every other year, with the final one being released March 3rd of 2015.
Oh my God. Wow, that's this is so interesting why there is this very real world around him, but Peter Pan is not the central focus. And it so throws back to that Tweety Bird sassy girl thing that you're talking about.
Well, and then you also, I want to bring up Jake and the Neverland Pirates for Disney Junior.
Oh, yeah.
Where Peter Pan and Captain Hook are not in every episode, but it's Jake is learning to be a pirate, and suddenly pirates are good. Pirates are helping Peter Pan. Pirates are part of Neverland.
I've never seen this show, but I remember seeing this one screen cap that kept floating around, which is a pirate does not take other people's things, which is literally the opposite of being.
That's exactly what a pirate is. That's exactly what a pirate is.
That literally made me snort laugh.
But it's one of those things that starting with Return to Neverland, because this movie made $115 million. Like, in Avengers money, that's not that much, but this movie only cost $20 million to make. You make $115 million in the box office. That does not include home video or soundtrack.
Or merchandise, which God knows Disney is the king of making merchandise on things.
It's not saying what their DVD sales were.
Yeah, that's why I was so surprised to hear that this was in the time of DVD, because I have such the relationship to the VHS.
Yep.
And I do think that maybe that's because, like, for a kids movie, I don't know if you would invest in a DVD. You know,
right.
Like, I feel like the first big DVD I bought that was like a kids movie was, well, I actually had Peter Pan that came out the year later, so that can't be true. Because I felt like my first big one was like Lion King or Finding Nemo. But those are much later movies, so that can't be right.
Finding Nemo was 2003. So Finding Nemo was a year later.
That's crazy, because the animation difference between Finding Nemo and this, they hold up in different ways.
Pixar to Disney. So, like, I don't think Disney had outright bought Pixar at that point. But I think they were in the process of acquiring them. They were still doing their releases. They were doing the distribution for Pixar.
Right.
But Nemo, I believe, kicked off a lot of that, like, buying out of Pixar and putting them in the parks and these things. Yeah, it's weird. So it looks, it was released on VHS and DVD, August 20th of 2002. I bought it for my birthday. That is my birthday. But apparently it had terrible sales. It had absolutely awful home video sales.
Well, I'm wondering what the cover art was, because I know you mentioned that earlier in the marketing. So Disney movies that are posters, Princess and the Frog is like the most beautiful, perfect example of this. The posters are gorgeous and amazing and evocative. And then because it's not a poster and you don't know if it's Disney or a Disney ripoff on the like video screen, they're often like all of the characters on one thing in as many things as they can put together. It's very like, if you look at the Avengers Endgame poster, it's very that on everything, but it's Disney characters.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if because maybe Jane was Jane featured like equally or more than Peter? Because that would be my guess as to why it maybe didn't sell as well.
I don't know. Yeah, because it's also then when you got it on a shelf, it's different than having it on a wall in the hallway of a movie theater. It does say that they released a Pixie-powered edition in November of 2007 that had, what they're calling the Peter Pan Trilogy, which is the Platinum edition of Peter Pan, Return to Neverland, and Tinkerbell, the first film, were released when Tinkerbell went on VHS or DVD sales. And then, of course, in true Disney fashion, it was released in June of August of 2013. Both films were released with this and Peter Pan as a 2-movie set, with the first time on Blu-ray. And then it has just been re-released in June of 2018 for the Disney Movie Club, both movies together. I'm sure that's why there is no actual home movie sales for this, because it's convoluted, because it then has to, in some aspects, combine a triple pack and then has to combine a double pack. But sometimes that's the only reason why you have movies. Like, I think it's the only reason why I have Pocahontas 2 is because I got Pocahontas 1 with Disney Movie Club, and they were both included. The same thing with Mulan and Mulan 2. And there might be a couple that I have the sequels to. Oh, Emperor's New Groove and Lilo and Stitch. I only have those sequels because of Disney Movie Club.
Oh my God.
They come bundled together.
Well, that's also so interesting because, so Peter Pan, you said, was on the Untouchables list. So probably a lot of people did not have that copy. So to buy a second, like a sequel movie for something you don't have a copy of probably feels weird.
Right.
Too. So I imagine that's probably why those bundles might have done better as well.
Well, and I remember for a long time, people hated the idea of DVD, one, because they were $29.99 each when they came out. So that was a lot in the mid-2000s, that was a lot for families. And so what families were doing is like we had all of the Disney movies up to a certain point on VHS. Then my parents did not want to put money into DVDs, but the first time a DVD player went below $100, my dad was like, "Let's get a DVD player." And it was a good DVD player. I think that's what
my mom did too.
And I remember us going to Suncoast Video because Walmart had like 23 DVDs. They had like 23 titles, where Suncoast Video had like fully invested in DVD because that was their thing. That was their brand.
Right.
And I think the Transformers animated film from '87 was the first thing I bought on DVD because it was a $15 DVD at the time. And I love Transformers. But like we didn't buy the Disney DVDs for a long time because VHS was still released until like 2005 or 2006. And so we were still buying VHS when we could find them. Just to answer everyone at home, March 31st of 1997 was the first time DVD went commercially on the market.
Ooh, and trivia.
It fully happened. It looks like full integration happened in the 2000 to 2003 was when we fully integrated into a DVD thing at home. So that's when people really started investing in. But that was the first time DVD-ROMs were sold with computers. And so people were able to watch DVDs on computer, and then they developed the DVD player for home as well. So just a little bit of random trivia there.
No, it's great. I will be able to impress Alex Trebek now. But I think that's interesting too, because I remember VHSs as a fixture very much, and then when they died, they seemed to die really quickly, and Blu-ray seemed to really try and replace them, but everybody had already bought this infrastructure for DVD, and we were by and large not changing, which is like just funny looking back that everyone was like, it's fine, we don't need a Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah. Well, so, like, I moved to New York City in 2007, and the Virgin Megastore was, like, the thing to go to on my day off, or, like, when I had time. I probably went to the Virgin Megastore, like, 4 or 5 times a week. And it was so, like, most people had just gotten Blu-ray in the home 2002, 2003-ish. This was 2007, so not a lot. And Blu-ray was coming out, but then also HD DVD was coming out, which, of course, was a separate player. And this is when the Xbox or the PlayStation 3 came out and the Xbox 360 came out. PlayStation 3 had Blu-ray, Xbox 360 had the HD DVD. Well, PlayStation sold better and Blu-ray really caught on, but it was still a lot because Blu-rays, I remember those first Blu-rays, some of them were up to like $50, but it was because you got so much of the extra stuff and they were selling those, all of the extra things, so that it'd be like, oh, look, you can put all of the Lord of the Rings extended cuts on one Blu-ray. Yeah. Your whole Harry Potter franchise, which wasn't even out yet, could live on 2 Blu-rays. You know, it was this thing that it was just the size of it was immense. And of course, Disney is always now, you know, we had talked about how they rejected it. They're always on the forefront of selling new technology. They will be the first one to be like, cool, this is the transition. I remember I had just gotten DVDs for one of the first couple episodes of this, and it was an older release of DVD. Probably 2007, 2006 was the last time it was released, so they just kept making it. And it was the first time they were selling, and it was like, I think the Blu-ray thing was happening, and it kind of lined up with Cars coming out on home video.
Oh, that sounds right, yeah.
And so there was like this whole and it was Lightning McQueen, and it was this very sleek and sexy Disney selling Blu-ray. And these are the first 4 Disney movies you can get on Blu-ray, so get them because you've never bought them at home before. But what was smart is they were selling those Blu-ray combo packs where they were like, well, you can get it on Blu-ray and DVD, so you can have both. So it's one of those.
Yeah, I got that one once. I think we bought it by accident. Was like DVD, Blu-ray, and digital download, and I was like 8 and could not figure out how to get the digital download to work. So I think I have a code somewhere in some house in some box, you know. But yeah, well, that's such a thing also of people already still had their VHSs, so having 3 systems to play your thing felt strange for a lot of people, I think. So until VHS is kind of, you know, unfortunately with age crapped out, then I think that's when people really started shifting their collections.
I also think a lot of what happened too was when people moved out of their parents' house and they didn't get to take their Disney VHS with them. In a lot of situations.
Oh, that's totally true.
They then transcended and they went, oh, well, look at this sleek new thing. Like because it's like 3 DVD cases are the width of one clamshell. So it's like one of those things that like, yeah, those movies took up a lot of space on a shelf. But there's something so cool still walking into a room and seeing just like a wall bookshelf full of Disney clamshells, which if you go to your local Goodwill most of the time, you can just see tons and tons and tons of those Disney clamshells. If you still have a Disney VHS and want that nostalgia, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so interesting also because a lot of my interaction with all of this was at Blockbuster Video, which we could walk to from my house. And definitely like seeing the progression of that and these kinds of combo packs as well, and that thing becoming popular with kids because you only had to rent one disc, but you got 2 movies. So even if you didn't really want that second movie, you could get a second movie for free, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like now that we're seeing a shift now that we've got Disney Plus, and so like this idea of, is anyone ever actually going to buy movies again? Like that's this weird thing of, I've got 5 binders. I think I've got like 700 movies in them between them. And it's one of those things. And like, that was me cleaning out. I think I got rid of like 200 titles last year when I moved to get rid of a binder. But it was one of those things that it was like, are we going to stop owning hard copies of media? And then we are, it's this weird thing of like renting a digital copy of something. It's like you can download it long enough to have this whole thing. It's just so wild to me.
Digital ownership is crazy.
Like I even went out the other day, Target had Frozen 2 for $12.99. You bet your ass I bought Frozen 2 for $12.99. I just bought Rise of the Skywalker because I have every other Star Wars movie on DVD. You bet your ass I'm buying that one. Like I want all of them.
Well, I think you've just hit the nail on the head for a lot of Disney specific fans, is that a lot of people are completionists in this group, it seems like. So now that we've started, you want to finish, A. And then B, Disney very smartly is doing collector's editions or platinum editions, or like I know that somewhere out there there's some person with the original release of Peter Pan, the silver, the gold, the platinum, and they've gone on eBay and found every version. So
don't call me and My Little Mermaid collection out like that, Hannah. How dare you?
I'm sorry. Listen.
Well, that only happened because I forgot to decline 2 titles on Disney Movie Club. If you're out there and you have Disney Movie Club, go log in and decline your next title. You're going to thank me.
Is that still running? I thought that they stopped. Oh my God.
Nope, Disney Movie Club's still going, and it's oddly expensive in the days of Disney Plus. I can't do it. Especially when they offer me my Blu-ray digital combo pack for $24.99, or because I don't have a Blu-ray player, so like all I need is the DVD. And so like that comes with a digital code most of the time now. So I can go to Target or Walmart week of the release and I can get it for a third of the price.
Right.
Or wait till Black Friday and I go do those like $3, $6, and $8 DVD deals at Walmart. And I just fill in what I've missed in those last 6 months. So, it's one of those things that like...
No, what were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, no, I think it's like you're saying that like this idea of completionist, and there are some things like I bought the CD-ROM for my MacBook 3 years ago when my iMac.
Oh my God, I love that.
And I was like, I have all these discs and I have nothing to watch them on, so this thing is $80 with my computer. But at that point we were still seeing the end of like software. I could still go out and buy I could buy the Adobe Suite on CD, for the love of God.
And you could just own it instead of having to buy it every year. Matt and I thought about this the other day.
I'm seething about it because I don't want to spend $200 for another year of Photoshop. I hate it. So it's that thing of I still want to own things, or, a lot of movies that are not Disney, because contrary to belief, I love things that are not Disney. I'm happy I own a DVD of of the first 2 Shrek movies and Prince of Egypt. You know, it's that thing of like, I just, you know, there are things that are not always going to be on streaming. And I'm really glad that I have those. Like, I have all the Robin Williams movies, which never go on streaming. Or, you know, the Amazon puts up The Birdcage for exactly 12 and a half hours on Prime sometimes. And it's like, catch it for this, catch it for this one afternoon, or she's gone again for 8 years. You know, or, you know, there are just some things where there are just some older movies that I really like still owning the discs. Now there is that thing, you know, when we talk about the transition from VHS to DVD, it was rough because DVDs do not have the shelf life, pun intended, that VHS had. Like a VHS still work. There are DVDs from 3 years ago that don't work. So like, you know, it's that thing that I can understand why parents were, while this did well, I'm sure a lot of parents were like, I don't want to sit through that movie again. And so then they didn't, or the kids weren't driven to see, you know, because a lot of times it's how well did you merchandise, which I don't remember this movie having a ton of merchandise outside of the Disney Store. And Disney Store is still not a common thing for a lot of people. And so, you know, it's one of those things of, was it because there wasn't merchandise? And this was still back when you had to wait 6 months to a year for something to come out on DVD.
Yes.
So like this came out in February. It was out on DVD in August. So that's like 7 months to forget a film. Like, you can completely forget this movie. I'd say this movie is forgettable in 6 months if you are not continually reminding people that it's happening. Where now,
I would say happily it echoes a lot of the story beats of Pan, with the with the large exception that we've mentioned previously. So also it's not even just forgettable, but it's very easy to be like, wasn't that in the first movie? Don't I already have the toy of that? So that's the other thing.
Yeah. And so it's unfortunate because I do really like this movie a lot. Like, I found myself, you know, I'm being, you know, you and I are both storytellers and theater artists. And so like what we do is kind of pick apart how a story's told, or we pick things apart. And this is one where I sit there and I go, you know, it's fine. I enjoy this. I really like this movie. I will watch it again in a couple months, probably. This is a once every couple of months movie, or this is one that I gladly go, what do you mean you've never seen this movie? Okay, let's sit down and watch this movie.
Yeah.
This is a good quarantine movie. I think this is for people who are watching through the Disney canon. This is something to not forget, and that you should definitely watch.
And, like, if you're interested in the history of the animation itself, it's such a good touchstone for where we saw things and where they're going. Because it does have both. It's, like, so funny. I still think it's funny. I'm thinking about it now. Like, that ship. It's so great. But also you're like, oh, we know how to use a 3D model now.
Oh, yeah. Well, and especially thinking about that, like, looking at this, and then, like, Treasure Planet came out, like, a year or two later, and Atlantis, and it's like, you can tell the difference between what Disney Toon Studios had utilized from Walt Disney Studios and, like, Disney Animation Studios, and then, like, where Disney Animation Studios were. Because this was also in the heyday when we were getting Recess, we were getting Weekenders, we were getting the Pepper Ann, we were getting these amazing Lilo and Stitch. Oh, no, not Lilo and Stitch series yet, because that movie had not come out until 2003. But we were getting some of these great animated, like, Disney had moved into the Disney Channel sector and the, like, Saturday morning lineup for the first time.
Yeah.
And so we had taken what we'd learned from that, like, Darkwing Duck tailspins of the mid-90s, combined it with, like, what worked from Disney Toon Studios and, like, what they were doing in video gaming and things. Also, at this point, I believe, hold on, I'm going to check.
I love this. Yeah, well, it's also, like, I've never had... I grew up without cable, so even, like, if they had this on the ABC in the morning, you got your Saturday morning cartoons that were Disney. So even, like, the populace of people who didn't have even basic cable, like, could interact with it. So that's another facet of it as well.
Well, and Hannah, do you know what was about to come out literally a month later?
No, tell me. I love it.
Kingdom Hearts came out for the PlayStation 2, which featured a Neverland, which featured a
Right.
Neverland sector. And so for me, I almost wish they'd waited till after Kingdom Hearts had come out, because they capitalized in that one, because Kingdom Hearts 1, I don't care what you say, is the best of the three movies, or the three games.
Yeah.
Because you could tell they had spent time on it in a way that wasn't the time they spent on 3, but it was like developing this thing, which was really cool. And it wasn't rushed like 2.
So I have to tell you this secret, which is I've never played a Kingdom Heart.
That's fine. That's fine. A lot of people haven't. I've only played through Kingdom Hearts 1 and then watched people play through Kingdom Hearts 2. For anyone at home, it is a series that was created with a Japanese company called Square Enix, who is responsible for the Final Fantasy franchise.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah.
And so they made this movie, this game with Disney, where you meet a boy named Sora and his two friends, Riku and Kairi, who live on an island, who go to this mysterious place called Traverse Town, and in this universe where Mickey Mouse is the king of everything, and he is married to Queen Mickey, and you travel through these worlds, these lands, accompanied by Goofy, your warrior, and Donald, your sorcerer, and you're this kid named Sora who has to find the Keyblades. And so each world is a Disney movie, and there are Final Fantasy characters throughout. I'm sure, Hannah, someone is screaming. They are screaming at me right now. But this is like from two people that have not played.
I have read the manga novelization of one of the games because that's the child I was. So I do get some points back for reading like 2 of the manga novelizations.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, and so you've got, Maleficent's your big villain, and you've got Jan Sid, who is the sorcerer from Fantasia, from The Sorcerer's Apprentice short. And so
Which
they
is the
really
one with
did
the buckets and the hats.
Yes, that's the one with the buckets and the hats. It's where we get Sorcerer Mickey. And so it's where Phantasmic comes from. And so it's this idea that, we have these two things, which is so interesting to look at Kingdom Hearts, look at Peter Pan, Return to Neverland, as these things that are like intrinsically of like why they chose to make Neverland. And it's a really hard, if I remember correctly, that Battle for Big Ben is hard.
I believe you.
In that world. And so... it's one of those things that, like, it was intrinsically part of that first game, and there was, like, product that was released with that, and I'm pretty sure there was more Peter Pan and Sora merchandise than there was Neverland 2 merchandise.
I'll tell you, that game has had a longer lasting impact than Return to Neverland.
Well, and so what's interesting to me is February is a weird release time, like a really weird release time for a movie. And so I think it's interesting that, like, they chose to release this in February instead of May or July. Like, to
Which
me,
are
this is
traditional kid movie months because everybody's out of school.
And so, and now they're known, and this was still right before the summer blockbuster. The idea of a summer blockbuster started. And so, but this could have been, 2002, this is just before Pirates was coming out. We had maybe gotten and this is before we got in line The Witch in the Wardrobe. This is before Disney was kind of recapitalizing with their live action. We hadn't even had that Haunted Mansion disaster yet. So,
the Eddie Murphy movie.
the Eddie Murphy, call back to episode 1, Dolewhip and Dreams, Haunted Mansion.
Yep.
But I think that's so interesting that, like, they didn't wait to release this. But I guess for them, this had been on the idea of release for so long that they just wanted to get it out. Also, because it was Toon Studios, they actually probably didn't want to put much marketing and much product development behind it. And so,
This is such a good question of marketing and stuff that I wish I had done more research about
Me too.
as well.
Well, and sometimes you can't even find that. Like, I was on another podcast this week, Screen Snark, check them out, where we talked about Onward and how I talked about how Disney didn't market Onward. They just didn't market it.
Okay, this is fascinating because I was living in Japan when Onward was supposed to be marketed. And I didn't think they marketed it there, but I thought that was an Asia market thing. So this is so interesting to hear. Okay.
No, there's one poster up at Hollywood Studios. There's like one banner announcing its release, and they're putting all of this stuff behind Soul, which is another Pixar. It's the first time we're getting 2 Pixar movies in 1 year. So I don't know if just all the things have moved around. I mean, Soul is probably going to be a much later release now because we just got announced that like Mulan is being moved back. Artemis Fowl is just going to be Disney Plus. Black Widow got moved all the way back to November, which means Eternals is now moved back to February.
Oh, damn.
So
that changes everything.
I always wonder where they decide to put like marketing and product development, because also there's only like 8 toys for this movie. There's a run of plush, 4 action figures, 5 Funko Pop, a couple books, and the wizard staff. Like, that's it. That's all, and a miniatures set. That's all we have out for this. And so if I remember correctly, Return to Neverland was very much the same. We got more Peter Pan stuff in like Disney Store, but we weren't getting new merchandise. Like,
well, this is so interesting to hear also because one of the arguably biggest visual differences between this movie and the first movie is there is no alligator. We get this crawfish thing, crocodile and like lobster instead, who is way more goofy and way less scary than the alligator was. So I'm like always wondering if that's like the alligator gave some kids too many nightmares, and that's why he disappears. Like literally, we're like, Smee I think has like a one-off line that's just like, the gator's not here anymore, sir. And then like we get this crawfishy looking thing, which is way more goofy, and the sounds he makes are more goofy and everything. So I wonder if he just wasn't seen as a marketable thing either, because that I know that alligator is on a lot of Disney merch stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And he now even like because we're not quite sure where in the realm of things the Neverland Fairies is in timeline. And so what happened was they've now made him a baby. We meet him as a baby. He gets hatched and Tinkerbell finds him. So Disney's done that thing where they're able to babyfy, and they made a little baby plush of him. And of course I own it because his eyes are this big. He's this big. I love him.
His eyes are as big as his body is what Matt is just doing.
Yes. Yeah. They are this big. And so it's one of those things that it is, it's this weird thing, and I will still, I guess, as we try and figure it out. But yeah, the octopus, I think they wanted something a little more zany. I'm not sure why.
Oh, he's an octopus, that's what it is. They just call him octopus. A codfish. That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the whole idea. Well, because codfish, for some reason, it's funny. And because even in Mary Poppins, you go, we're not a codfish, Michael.
Yeah, and, they do.
So I'm on this website called the DisneyCollector.se, which is the Spanish website. And so this is also a lot of specifically Spanish made. But there was a large merchandise push around the release of Return to Neverland on home video that is all from an old line called Disney Heroes from a Japanese brand called Tomy. Which, if you know, from your time that you spent there, I know you know Tomy. And it's called Disney Heroes, and it's just figure sets. You could buy the Darling house, and it was an open-up, dollhouse, but it was an action set for boys. And then there are all these 3 or 4 figure sets that you could get with them that were the Lost Boys, they were the natives, they were the pirates, and there was a ship set as well, and Peter's thing. But all I am finding that McDonald's did a Return to Neverland release spot in 2002.
Oh, that's what I want. The McDonald's toys are always the best toys, I swear.
And then Tomy did, because apparently Return to Neverland didn't release internationally till almost 2004, which can have a lot to do with it. It didn't at least make it to Japan, and so they did a Tomy line in 2004 that was just Jane and Tinkerbell flying. And they did a small set of figures and plush for that. But I'm not finding a ton of
stuff. I actually don't know Tomy very well, but it does not surprise me that they would have sold Jane and Tinkerbell as a set. From my time there, and really observed a lot of partnered stuff, whether that's friendship partners or love partners. So for example, I forget her name, but Stitch has a pink girlfriend, and
Angel.
she's Angel, thank you. She's not like super popular in America, but like she is in a show in Disney Sea. She is like in all of the merchandise for Stitch that's not specifically tied to the movie. So we have like Tsum Tsums, which Matt and I were just talking about off mic. And there is a set of movable, posable plushies in Japan called Nuimos, Nuimos, I think is how you say that. I have never heard anyone say it, so sorry that it's probably wrong. But she was one of like the first things they released, which is like I think she got released before the Pooh characters, which is like crazy to an American audience. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely not that surprising to hear that pair together.
It's funny that you talk about that because I have an Angel Tsum Tsum.
Cute.
Well, so she's cute, and she was 75 cents on clearance at Target, so of course I was gonna buy her. That's typically what you and I talked about. It's when we bought our Sims, but like this to me, it seems like an easily merchandisable film. Like it seems like something that I could easily merchandise and make products for.
I'm really surprised to hear you can't buy like the Lost Boy suits, because I know you can buy a Peter Pan costume everywhere in the world. So that's like really, I'm so shocked.
Yeah. So what's interesting is you talked about what the cover looked like. So the cover was Jane, Peter, Smee, Captain Hook, and Tinkerbell. And when it was released on DVD, it had a huge white Peter Pan and in smaller gold letters, Return to Neverland underneath of it. And so this was then, they did this with The Great Mouse Detective as well, where they then rebranded it as The Adventures of the Great Mouse Detective. And so, yeah, like I'm on eBay right now, and there's nothing but DVDs that you can buy from Return to Neverland.
Which is really unusual.
Really there are a few people have the McDonald's toys, but it looks like because if it's going to exist, it's going to be on eBay. It will be
totally good sentence.
If it exists, it's on eBay. There are only McDonald's toys. They're the only things that look like they were fully released with this movie. There was an American set and a UK set. The UK set, you could build the ship, and in America, they were just adventure toys.
Sounds so cool, though. I love that.
Oh, and in Asia also got the... So this is really weird. Like, why do you think they didn't merchandise this movie? Like, I don't understand why there were no dolls. If nothing else, why weren't there dolls?
Well, I actually was just... While you were saying that, I was thinking that a lot of the merchandise I saw in when I was living in Japan, when Frozen 2 was coming out, I would say 70% of it was Frozen 2 merchandise, but they were pushing Frozen regular merchandise as well. So I'm wondering if, since this was I'm going to guess they thought this was going to be less successful, that they instead pushed or re-released additional regular Peter Pan scheme. Oh my god, I can't say anything. Peter Pan merchandise SKUs. There we go. As a result, because also, right, product development does take time and money. So, and Peter Pan's costume's the same. Like, we don't have to do a new one for that. So I'm wondering if that's part of it. Though I'm surprised they didn't. I know Wendy dresses were a really big sell. Like you could come and you could wear the little nightgown. So I'm surprised they didn't like push Jane dresses. That's so interesting.
Well, and so this is interesting that we talk about this. So now, so we had the Aladdin live action. We've got the Mulan live action coming out. And what it has done is for Disney Store, they've gone, we're going to re-release retro lines of all the animated stuff and actually nothing that's now themed in the live action with the exception of a couple dolls. Because both Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin's doll lines have ended up in the clearance bin at every store they've existed in because they weren't well made. And so it's interesting now that they're using this as this point of, we know nostalgia is going to sell better than this new movie is, so let's capitalize on nostalgia and sell new merchandise of the original animated characters. And so I'm not surprised. I agree with you that I'm not surprised that they kind of did the same thing and used it as a thing to make boys' action lines out of Peter Pan and the...
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
And just like that, technology strikes, folks. I deeply apologize. The end of my interview with Hannah got cut off. But if you couldn't get enough of the two of us together, make sure you head over and check out our bonus episode where Hannah talks about her experiences living in Japan and visiting Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea, as well as my episode of Isolation Cast with Hannah.
Hello, my name is Hans Martin Jr., your real movie critic. If you enjoy discussing upcoming movie news, looking at new trailers, and reviewing the year's hottest movies, then tune in to...
Hey, Hans!
What?
Are you doing the promo without me?
Yeah, I am.
How come?
Because everyone knows I'm the better host of this podcast.
Oh, it's like that, huh? You think you can review movies better than me?
I don't think I can. I know.
Oh, we'll see about that. This is...
The Real Movie Critic
versus... The Cine Guy. Mondays only at CertainPOV.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also on Spotify and iTunes. You're going down, critic.
Bring it on, guy.
Thank you for joining us for another serving of Dolewhip and Dreams. We are pleased to announce that we have a shop of magical wares and dreamy items via Teespring, including some seasonal items that are only available until June 1st. Find the link to that on our Facebook, Instagram, and in the show notes. If you use code Dolewhip, DOLEWHIP, you get free shipping on all orders. That's right, free shipping for you all on all orders with the code Dolewhip. In June, we're going to be introducing some really amazing Pride wear, with all proceeds going to a magically inclusive group that we will announce soon. Find us on Facebook at Dolewhip and Dreams Podcast, on Instagram at Dolewhip and Dreams, on Twitter at Dolewhip Pod, and you can support us for only $2 a month. That's right, just $2 a month on Patreon. Just search Dolewhip and Dreams Pod, and we will be right there. And this gets you another exclusive savings code for our online store, and it also just lets us know that you like what we're doing. Thank you as always to our amazing research assistant, Angela Gwynn, and our sound editor, David White. I couldn't do the show without you. Now we'll be back next time, and may your days be filled with Dolewhip and dreams.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.